All right, take two. This is John Watson with Torg Eternity. Sorry about the technical difficulties, gang. We are here to discuss Pan Pacifica, which everybody I know is very excited about. Got several of the other authors here with me: Greg Gordon, Deanna Gilbert, and Brian Reeves. So we'll take it away from here. If any of you wanted to say anything about yourselves, I know I might have stolen your thunder there a little bit, team, but just wanted to introduce everybody real quick. So. All right, so we'll kick it off. Deanna, since you wrote it, do you want to? I mean, you're the main author. Why don't you kick us off? Yeah, start us with everything.
Well, I'm the lead developer.
Exactly.
This one, I am by no means the sole author on this. This is a lot more of a cooperative effort with multiple authors on this one. But yeah, it is probably, I would characterize it as the cosm that's going to end up changing the most from the core book. It is still a cosm that features the corporate intrigue, but it is set in East Asia, but it is not the cosm of East Asia corporate intrigue. There are certainly some elements that are going to be there, and some elements of stuff that you will find in the fiction and stuff like that, in the movies and the stories from East Asia, but it is a little bit more generalized than this is the East Asia part for Torg Eternity.
So, and with that team or gang, we've got a lot of really cool things coming. We've continued to modify a lot of things. With Deanna's guidance, some really good stuff that I'm excited about personally. And I'm sure she might hang me after this call. I want to talk to me really closely, but reveal a few things. But we've changed just the electric samurai armor to hard suits, I believe, is what we agreed on. Deanna, correct?
Yeah, essentially they're getting. The electric samurai perk category is kind of getting redistributed. The Iron Gosuku armor is now one of several different types of power suits. And the other two perks that were in that are kind of getting put into prowess and martial arts. But speaking of martial arts, there will be a fairly extensive treatment of what we're calling breath powers now instead of ki powers, since ki, specifically that word, is Japanese, and we're trying to do a more pan-Asian kind of thing, and you don't want to make that region seem like it's just one monolithic culture when it's not. So we're basically shuffling things around a little bit. And that was the other significant change that we're making. And also, martial arts are not going to be so supernatural as a lot of people would normally expect. That doesn't mean you can't have the type of combats or characters who might do wire fu or whatever that's called, like in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. But that is with the assistance of psionics, as opposed to being a martial art in and of itself. That said, the rough structure that martial arts is going to have is that there will be this group of perks, breath perks, that do a whole bunch of neat things that are activated by spending shock. But in addition to that, there are perks that we're calling paths. So the path of the fist and foot is essentially your unarmed combat specialist for martial arts. And some of the other ones we've got is sort of like the path of the gun. So if you want to be John Wick, there's going to be I can't remember what we're calling it, but essentially it's using somebody else's force against themselves. But also we're going to expand a little bit beyond what you normally would think of that and get into, well, let me back up for a sec. Each of these paths is a perk. And purchasing the perk doesn't really necessarily give you anything immediately. What it does is it gives you benefits and abilities that you can do based on the number of adds you have in a certain skill. So for the path of the fist and foot, that's unarmed combat. For the path of the sword, it's melee weapons. The path of the gun, it's fire combat. Now, we're also going to be looking at a path that involves kinesis, so for psionics, and one that involves faith, which is involving the priests of Palan. Or Palan. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too. I'm not the only one then. Okay, I feel a little bit better.
You get to choose. You get to decide.
Palan. Yeah. Okay. There was
Palan. I don't know.
Palan, or Palan sounds better actually. Yeah. So, anyways, speaking of them, the priests of Palan are back in, and they're a little bit weird. They do have access to miracles, but they're going to also have some elements that involve psionics and martial arts. And they're going to have their own path, the path of Palan. And essentially, you've got each of these paths will have these abilities like disarming people or being able to I'm trying to think of the details, and they're not really coming to me, but there's a different ability for each ad that you've got, and the abilities above 5 start getting pretty or the intent is they're going to be getting a fairly powerful, because you also need a mastery skill in order to get that high. But that's essentially what we're looking at. It has not been really well tested yet, so we don't know how well that's going to work in place. So take that with a grain of salt. But that's sort of the way that we're kind of looking at it. And the reason I went that way is because I wanted to still kind of bring in how martial arts were handled in original Torg, but not quite getting as detailed as they did there, but having a sort of progression in abilities that you got, as you went
along. Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of piggyback on what some of the things Deanna said. The psionics specifically worked very closely together on those, and just we've got 2 branches for the most part. We've got disciplined psychics, which we were thinking, or I was, that, there's people that studied, discipline, decided, hey, our social action went up, let's study these powers, etc., because they experienced all these things going on from the contagion, whatever you call it, what you will, where the mutated psychics got all these powers. Which, while the disciplined psychics are just that, more disciplined, really more things closer to, the kind of, what was the term you used, Deanna? The Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon type, ooh, I'm going to be able to dance on treetops, all that kind of miraculous things. Well, yeah, those are going to be the ones that are martial artists, but happen to be psychic as well. Whereas the mutant psychics are going to be the ones that have not as refined, and, not that their power level is going to be different, but typically they have more raw, unrefined power, like maybe something like, just to give you something here, Fulgurkinesis is one of the powers that we wrote, which is just like pyrokinesis, but electricity, which will be kind of neat and cool, and, just different things like that we decided to explore in there. And, I just got to say, Deanna, the different trees, if you will, of martial arts. I mean, really cool. I'm excited just as a player. Heck, when I was looking through those, like, okay, I want to be of Art of the Sword. I want to do Art of the all of that. Gosh, that's really cool. I never would have really thought of that as well. Yeah. So I know personally, just as a player and a developer, both, I'm excited to play through those things. So.
And now, actually, you just reminded me one aspect of those is that we're terming each of these abilities Oh, geez, now I'm drawing a blank. It's not maneuvers. It was something else. Nope, can't think of it. But anyways, the idea was that generally speaking, most people would only do one at a time. But you could put them in a combo. But in order to do the combo, you have to declare which ones you're going to do. You don't necessarily have to spend the shock, but you have to actually say that I'm going to try a roundhouse kick and then backflip and then do a punch to this guy's face. And so I know that there was a little bit of confusion on how those worked as far as contradictions go. And so we've kind of tried to tighten that up a little bit. Do you want to jump in on anything yet, Greg?
Yeah, I was going to say that the thing, because I like the meta stuff, right? And so the law of assimilation and the ability to start sliding in world laws in different places and with different people. I love that sort of stuff. And so I'm getting excited about exploring that. And the other part is related to Pan Pacifica is just that the Infiniverse update, which is coming out in the same wave. So in 2 weeks, we should be getting out the first Infiniverse reporting form to folks for the Pan Pacifica wave. And so they can start getting feedback in for the update. But I want to make Torg a little bit stranger. And I think Pan Pacifica gives us a solid foundation for mixing and matching some stuff. So I'm pretty excited. I like the world laws, and I like go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking that maybe we should tell them what they are. So the world laws of Pan Pacifica, the big change is that the law of vengeance is gone, and it is replaced by the law of rationalism, which is a world law that was borrowed from the conquered cosm of Cadandra, which a lot of longtime Torg fans will recognize as the home cosm of Dr. Hachi Mera II, who is a agent for the Delphi Council in this book. And essentially, the law of rationalism is a world law that grants the tech axiom-based stuff an advantage inside Pan Pacifica, so that there is a problem. Well, it is more. You have negative. What's the word I'm looking for? Consequences for using psionics, magic, or miracles inside Pan Pacifica, and namely that even if you succeed on a standard success, you're still taking backlash. And then there's some cosm cards that will be associated with that as well. And the reason this happens is that there is one of the minor laws of Pan Pacifica is the law of acquisition, which allows the High Lord to basically use or borrow or steal world laws and axioms from invaded cosms, as long as they're still parts of it in existence. So in the core book, we do mention that there are 3 conquered cosms that Marketplace invaded, and we are going back to the original name Marketplace. And that these are essentially part of what they call the conglomerate, where they are using these cosms as markets, but also for natural resources. But they've all got little pockets of their own reality still not taken over by their own stellae, because they're basically, I don't like to use the word, but it's what's coming to mind is like their reserves for
cold storage.
Yeah, essentially, just in
go.
case they need to use it. The other source that they've got is Eternity shards. And so what they do is they go out and they gather as many Eternity shards. And if they get a certain number, they can start using that to start manipulating their own reality. And so because of this, you can have an invasion and have it not be quite as different as other invading realities might be. And one of the big uses that Raiko, who is now she is the High Lord of Marketplace. Ryuichi is on the run. Yeah, and so what she has done is she's not only brought in this law of rationalism, but she's also buffed the tech axiom as far as biotechnology goes. And the reason that she was able to do this was through the use of acquired cache eternity shards. And so it's not as the tech axiom didn't go up to as high as the cations, but it goes up to 25. And so what this is going to allow is what we're calling gene mods. It's essentially biotech that's like cyberware and occultic. It's using the same rules. It's got different aspects to it, different trappings, but it's using the same mechanics. And but the one thing that differentiates it from a Kashin biotech that we went with is that up to 25, you could only modify things that are already existing, or you can only take modifications that from organisms that already exist, and you can only apply them to organisms that already exist. And so people have, genetically modified code in their DNA that allows them to take on, aspects of an octopus or cat or dogs or that sort of thing and get benefits from it. But there's no like biotech weapons, like there's no new organism, because we want that's going to be the Akashian stuff. The Akashian's going to get to play with that stuff.
No guns you have to feed every day and stuff.
Right. Yeah. And part of that too is that it is supposed to be a stealth invasion. It's not. It's a little weird, but it's not so weird that you go, okay, that's a little bit ridiculous. It's enough that you can go, that's reasonable if somebody did something, and the and part of that with the stealth invasion, we wanted to reflect how the actual reality helps them do this. And we have another minor law called the law of adaptation, which essentially, first off, it allows the darkness device to actually absorb possibility energy for mixed zones. So there's not as much of a incentive to switch these over to dominant or to pure. But also it gives them the ability to manufacture lower tech items with higher tech manufacturing technology, which is not normally a thing that you can do, but they can do it. So they're sort of still back to providing the arsenal for the other countries for fighting against the invaders. And also that's why, reality storms are subtle and, it slows down the axiom wash changes and stuff like that. But they have the third world law is the law of perversity, which essentially is Murphy's Law is literally part of the reality. No matter what, how much control you think you have over a situation, you do not have that control. The reality loves to take you down a peg. And so Raiko has been using the law of assimilation to mess around with the reality, and it's having side effects. And one of those side effects is that the social axiom is now boosted to 10, which matched Earth or Chorus, which has opened up the possibilities for slightly. I mean, they're not exactly powerful miracles, but they're there. And also it allows spirits to start messing around on their own as well. That wasn't a thing that could really happen. So essentially, like I said, this is quite a change, I would say, from the way it was addressed in the core book. I was talking a lot there, so anybody want to take over for a bit?
Hey, you did a lot of work on it, Deanna. So yeah, you should talk a lot. But Go ahead, team. So, well, if not, I've got a question for everybody. So, Brian and Greg, you haven't talked as much. What are you two both, and we'll get to questions here in a minute. I know you guys have a lot of good questions. The fans, we are going to get to those just in a second. But Brian, Greg, are there anything like in particular you're excited about from Pan Pacific? I know, Greg, you kind of already talked about it. What about you, Brian? What are you most excited about?
I'm mostly excited about the biotech that Deanna was just talking about. I feel like it adds something new. Pan Pacifica has changed it's changed a lot since Torg Eternity first came out. It's getting kind of an update. Even that was a pretty dramatic update from the old Torg Nippon Tech, and I'm just really excited to see how it's evolving, and I think it's evolving into something that, for me personally, is gets more and more interesting on a lot of different levels. We're going to really sort of push some of those the conspiracies and things like that in our adventure, in the mega adventure, which is going to have several pretty interesting things that you haven't seen before happening in our adventures.
Oh yeah, you can say that again, sir.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to play into some of the world laws. Really sort of have those sort of deep tissue getting into the adventure as well, which I'm looking forward to. Some little bit more experimental things. One of the things Deanna wanted to bring into Pan Pacifica was the idea of heists, and she could probably talk a lot more about how that would look, but where you're trying to acquire something and have to go through all this process of doing that, rather than what we usually see, where we just have scene 1 and then scene 2 and then scene 3 of things that happen sequentially, but giving you a little bit more room to explore some almost self-directed scene breakdowns. And we're also going to do something similar to that in another act, which is going to be more of a sandbox kind of scenario, where you are in a location and can move around, and scene breaks are not going to be as perfectly delineated as they normally are in our adventure. So those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to. I can't speak too much on the source book because that's Deanna and a couple of other people who are working on that. But from what I'm seeing, I'm really liking it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how I can use that stuff in the adventures that John and Lehman and I are working on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm there with you 100%. Just one small teaser I did want to give. So those of you with the core book, there's a just small little blurb about this in there, and then also mentioned again in Heroes of the Possibility Wars that John Wick, not to be confused with the assassin, although I do think John Wick should do a game called John Wick Defense. Yeah, exactly. He should make the TTRPG. Next time I see him in a con, I'm gonna be like, dude, you gotta do it. Get the rights. But there's a small blurb mentioned about Operation Eris. The mega adventure. We're going to explore that a little bit more, because we figured, when we were kind of brainstorming this, hey, Pan Pacifica might be the perfect cosm to do that, which I'm sure most would agree it is. So, but I'll leave the more details until that gets released. So
everyone's scrambling to search through their Torg Eternity source books now to remember what that was all about.
Yeah, exactly, because it's a little hidden kernel, actually. So yeah,
in there,
really cool.
but it's there.
Yeah.
I think the thing that excites me, other than the meta stuff, is this, to me, sort of rearranges the strategic pecking order of the cosms. That Pan Pacifica moved up the ranks and now is a real heavyweight. I think it has unique abilities that allow it to go toe-to-toe with the Gaunt Man, which most cosms just flat out don't. And go ahead.
Well, the one thing I wanted to add on that is the little segment that we had in the Aurora source book, where Pan Pacifica is very much a numbers-oriented cosm, and it is possible that they go, decide, hey, Delphi Council, want to make an alliance? And all of a sudden that just gets messed up. We're not going into that in the first year, though, but that is a possibility going ahead.
They've also been very busy. I can't wait till you guys see the map.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
Uh,
that's you.
Yeah, well, I'll just quickly jump in. So we are having Australia gets invaded in year one. It's right at the end. It's only Sydney, but basically they couldn't take a gift horse in the mouth after the abnormal kaiju attack on Sydney. Now that said, and I don't want to. Kaiju are not a big thing. Okay, they are a big thing, but they're not a thing that we're going to focus on in Pan Pacifica. They are going to be something that could happen in the future, but it's a matter of scale. We wanted to keep things at the street level as much as possible. But that fact that there could be more of them is going to be in the background as well. Greg, you want to finish what you were getting at there?
No, I just think that it makes the possibility wars a lot more flexible in terms of how things are going to end up, because Pan Pacifica now isn't naturally opposed. In some cosms, they can't coexist. Cyber Papacy really can't coexist with anybody. Tharcold is dying, and you have an Isle is pretty much so connected to Aurora that their rebellion is almost guaranteed to fail. But now you've got somebody who's operating independently from the Gauntman, who's developing their own version, some of the Gauntman super weapons, if you will, and has the ability to borrow it's such a corporate idea to go best of breed with all the realities to build whatever they want to do. And I think that makes it way more exciting to me, because before it felt like, yeah, the Gauntman's going to win. And now I can see, okay, now we've got at least a lot of other paths we can offer out of this, from the Delphi Council Alliance to simply the Pan Pacifica figuring out to just a Pan Pacifica Living Land Alliance that can do some pretty awesome stuff with biotech. And so I was like, okay, I'm getting excited again as to how we can, toss the ball back up in the air and not have it feel quite so preordained. And so I think it's that's going to be exciting stuff to write for year two.
Yeah. So, and actually, just to add a little bit on there, we haven't really gone into this too much in depth as far as how we could implement it, but we are even looking at allowing the law of acquisition allow Ryko to change individual zones as far as, world laws or stuff like that. So it could get a little bit interesting, but like I said, we haven't really taken a close look at that sort of thing just yet. But it did occur to me that we haven't talked about the big elephant in the room, and that's the Contagion. Ooh. And essentially the Contagion is, for all intents and purposes, controlled. We didn't want to highlight it for obvious reasons. The creatures that are associated with it, we're calling Xenogospog, have their own mutations and their own kind of rules. And they are still a thing. I mean, they're still Taiwan, which is basically covered in them. But as a plague, it is not a thing. So we just didn't want to be playing something that was a little bit too close to real life. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have problems like little mini outbreaks within facilities, like there's sort of one in Relics of Power for spoilers. But it's not going to be something we really focus on very much. But we probably should do some questions.
Yeah, I was just about to suggest that as well.
Let's see here. So Jeff Walkland says, will cloning be a thing in Pan Pacifica? Yes, but not a big thing. It's there, but you don't really have forced growth cloning or having your brainwaves implanted into clones yet. That is something that Ryko is trying to do, but she hasn't been able to successfully do it yet. Let's see here. Somebody asked if it's the law of assimilation or the law of acquisition. Oh, PK Levine. It's both. It's a little bit ambiguous there, unfortunately, and I get kind of. Originally, we were going to call it the law of acquisition, the law of assimilation, but we decided to rename it slightly. Let's see here.
Yeah, I started trying to catch up on the questions myself.
Yeah.
Robert, are there any that you saw that stood out to you that we could answer as well?
Randallin asks, so basically BioWare will let you take animal traits? Yes. That is really what it's going to be about, is taking animalistic traits and then applying them to the human genome.
You want to give them an example?
No, because that stuff is
Okay.
that stuff is literally, alpha, pre-alpha kind of stuff. So
Okay.
it's like it's going to change, and I haven't really looked into the details too much because we needed to get the book compiled to a point we could give it to the adventure writers so they could start working on that stuff. So there is stuff in there that I don't even know yet because I haven't read it in any in detail quite yet.
I can say that pre-alpha tends to mean there's a Discord channel where we're talking about all this stuff. Pre-alpha means it's stated in the morning and rescinded by the afternoon because we found that, wait, but what happens? Because we're just tossing all the ideas in a bucket, and then when that process finally slows down, we ship it out for other eyes to look at it. But a lot of it is still churning because the ideas they aren't shrinking, they're getting larger and trying to apply them to bigger chunks of the game. And so I'm happy to keep that process going. Because like I say, the more heft we can give Pan Pacifica, the happier I am.
Agreed.
Hey, Robert here. There's a question. Where did it go? Is there still a plan to work Bioshock-style plasmids into PP in some way?
I think so. I know that Nathan has a section on that when I put it in imported, and a lot of the problem is that I'm doing the layout, and so I've basically tried mostly right now to get the stuff to fit. And so I don't know the details, but there is a section in the GeneMod chapter which does cover that sort of thing, I think. But yes, I like that idea, and so we probably will have that in some fashion.
And then Frank asks, will there be a role for Ryuichi Kanawa in the future?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, too. I know Brian and I can some things we've talked about. So yeah, especially you might again a little teaser about the mega adventure. You might see a little bit about him or one of his clones, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
And Michael Roderick asks, the previous design commitment has been that new books should not create new subsystems. Does this rule out the Megacorp warfare as a PC tool?
Yes and no. It's not going to be like what you saw in the original Torg source book, but we do have the stuff about heists does take a little. It's not really new rules. It's more using the rules in a different way for essentially making mega corporations into threats that you sort of battle in a different style, and that kind of goes into how we're going to handle heists, and that's still a work in progress. But as far as heists go, if you are liking the TV show Leverage, and if you don't, I don't know why not, or Ocean's 11 or Mission Impossible, that is the sort of thing we're looking at doing, where competent people are doing things, and the question is, how does things mess up for them, as opposed to necessarily whether or not they succeed. It's what else happens to them while they're going along that journey.
Mr. Furious asked, what does Mobius do with all this? And I think that was in reference to sort of Kanawa and Pan Pacifica becoming more powerful.
We don't know yet. That's year 2 stuff.
So
yeah.
I can tease this one.
Okay.
The proposal that was accepted by Marcus has a product called War of the Century. So that's part of Mr. Mobius's reaction.
Nice. And then he also asked, Mr. Fierce also asked, will there be an underdeveloped area of Pan Pacifica?
Yes, we're going to have the Koreas. So North and South Korea are going to be that area that we're not going to get too involved with as far as official products go. So as far as geography goes, it's going to be mostly China, mostly Japan, and a little bit of Indonesia and Southeast Asia and Australia. And the thing about Australia is that the entire world now knows for sure that there is an invader in East Asia. Nobody, or I shouldn't say nobody, but very few people in East Asia believe this. The Kanawa's propaganda is too good. She knows, she's weaponized the social axiom that even though there's evidence there, they either suppress it or they basically call it fake news and people, believe it. And the invasion of Australia, where you had a lot of East Asians being part of the invasion of Japan and China and the Koreas, you're going to have a lot of Caucasians and Polynesians and Aborigines involved in the invasion of Australia. And so now, just as the Delphi Council goes, see, there's an invasion in East Asia. Now there's one in Australia, and now they've got to basically come around and prove that to the Australian government, because the Australian government doesn't believe it, that they've been invaded.
Let's see. Simon asks, each High Lord's relationship with their darkness device is very unique. What is Raiko's relationship with their darkness device?
It is very businesslike. She believes that the Daikoku has its own agenda, and she is correct. And we teased in the core book, the darkness device of Pan Pacifica is talking to the darkness device of the Living Land. And there are a few aspects that we've kind of speculated internally about what that's all about. But it is not something we're going to explore too much just yet. We're gonna leave that for year 2 or later.
All right, we got to get wrapping up here. But PK Levine says, how does the benching of the Contagion plot affect the Akasha disease tie-in?
It doesn't really. I mean, it's essentially, it was a reason for Raiko to start messing around with her tech axiom. Was she wanted to understand these, seeds a little bit more, and try to use them for something. And so, unless PK Levine is talking about the Komagaz, I think that's what he's actually talking about. Yes, the Komagaz is still a thing. That is all there, but it is different. And the only thing I will say about that, I'll tease, is go look up an obscure one-season TV show called Threshold.
All right. That's a pretty good analogy. Yeah. Okay.
I'm not even familiar with that one. I'm going to go check it out now, Deanna.
Have we not heard of that before? I'll go look at that.
Here's a great kind of one of the last questions here from Simon. What have you learned from the process of writing all the other Cosm books that has influenced this last core Cosm book?
That the most important thing, I think, for writing these source books is that it's sort of a cliche that it's a team effort. It really is a team effort. Even just having somebody go over what you've written and go, that might not be a good idea. improves the end product immensely. And especially if you can get a small group of writers, there are some really neat ideas that can start getting wrapped around. And especially for Pan Pacifica, my problem with this one is that I am not familiar, as a lot of people, with the genres associated with that cosm. And so we've tapped a lot of writers who do have a lot of experience with handling that sort of thing. And so it's been pretty fun seeing what people can come up with. It's always nice to have an idea of what you want to do and then putting that on paper. But it's pretty fun too to have the general idea and then see what evolves out of that.
I think that. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Greg.
For me, is that we have learned how to swing for the fences more and more with each source book in terms of playing with some of the initial assumptions that came from old Torg or have come from other stuff. And so we've been, I think, expanding the universe in way more interesting ways. And I think that has showed the evolution of that. Each source book has improved that process. And so Pan Pacifica is simply it's the next step. It's got some other cool ideas baked in there. So,
yeah, I think Greg and Deanna are spot on with that. A lot of our ideas sometimes, if we just, don't ask anybody else for their opinion and we're just in an echo chamber, well, it's not going to be very creative. But I know some of the better things I've come up with. I mean, Deanna personally and I, we've challenged each other on things. And I think I know, like the powers, some of the ideas, push things out, push things in, etc., made it a heck of a lot better than it have just been one of us working on it. Greg with some other things too. So yeah, that's one big thing, me personally as well. I know I haven't been as part of the team as long as everybody else though, but seeing things develop and change since then. One of the things I think we've all learned is, hey, diversity, that really helps us out a lot. A lot of minds thinking on something, as the old saying goes, many hands make for light work, we've really, been able to build upon that idea.
Well, I will say that this is by far the fastest a book has come together after we really started diving into it. There was a lot of important work done in the last 6 weeks. I'll just say that much.
How about you, Brian?
Well, I don't usually get too involved in the writing of the source books, but I do get involved in the writing of the adventures. And I want to also say that one thing I have learned is just how that same thing of teamwork also improves that as well, because one person might have an okay idea and you run it past somebody else and it gets almost filtered through 2 or 3 different minds, and we've just been able to improve things so much beyond what just one person would be able to do.
And I got to jump in there for a second. I'm sorry, especially with the mega adventure. I had a basic idea, and then I got with Brian Lehman, and I remember there were several moments we were in a video call just like this. It was probably like once they mentioned something I just didn't even think about, and it's just, oh man, wonderful. I am genuinely excited to have everybody read and experience the characters, go through that and everything. So nail on the head there, sir.
Nice. Well, I think that is where we will call it for tonight. So thank you, John, Deanna, Brian, and Greg. And for everybody that's here, stick around. In another 10 minutes or so, we're going to have another panel reintroducing Space 1889 with Rachel Savicki, who I think she wrote for Torg, right? She did some Torg stuff. So she's writing with Daryl Hayhurst, and Timothy Brown will be on the Space 1889 panel in about 10 minutes. And if you want to watch some more Torg Eternity, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Pacific time, Rudy Basso will be doing a live play right here on Twitch. Right. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Cheers, everybody.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.